Nobody in Blackwater Cove spoke about the sea after midnight. Not because of storms, not because of sharks, but because of a trawler called the Mercy Belle. The fishing boat disappeared for 11 days during the winter of 1998. No distress call, no wreckage, no bodies. The Coast Guard searched until fuel became too expensive, and the town slowly accepted what everyone always accepts near the ocean. The sea keeps what it wants. Then, on the 12th morning, the boat came back, floating silently. No crew, no blood, no signs of struggle, just wet footprints leading from the lower deck to the captain's cabin, and stopping directly in front of the radio, as if someone had stood there listening, waiting. The sheriff closed the case in less than a week, but 20 years later, a journalist named Elias Crowe found something inside the evidence locker that changed everything. A cassette tape, and the voice recorded on it belonged to a woman who officially died before the boat ever returned. Elias Crowe wasn't famous. At 34, he worked for a failing online crime magazine in Seattle called Northline Files. Most of his articles were about missing tourists, insurance fraud, or small-town corruption nobody cared about. But Elias had one habit that made editors nervous. He never let dead stories stay dead. When his editor sent him to Blackwater Cove for a cheap nostalgia article about the vanished fishing crew, Elias expected another boring mystery with no answers. Instead, he found fear, real fear. The locals avoided eye contact whenever the Mercy Belle was mentioned. The bartender at a harbor pub nearly dropped a glass when Elias asked about the ship. An old fisherman muttered, "You should leave before the tide changes." Even the sheriff refused an interview. That was unusual. People normally love talking about old mysteries. Unless the mystery wasn't over. Elias eventually bribed a retired evidence clerk named Nancy Bellamy with cigarettes and whiskey. That was how he got the cassette. The tape was labeled only with 3 words. "Do not duplicate." Back in his motel room, Elias played it. Static filled the room first. Then waves. Heavy waves. After several seconds, a terrified male voice whispered, "They found us." Another voice replied, "Shut the lights off." Then came a loud metallic bang. Footsteps. Someone crying. And finally, a sentence that made Elias freeze. "They're climbing aboard." Gunshots exploded through the recording. Men screamed. The tape crackled violently. Then silence. Until one final voice appeared. Calm, cold, almost amused. "Tell Blackwater Cove the black tide remembers." The recording ended there. Elias replayed it 6 times. Because, according to official records, the woman speaking at the end was Mara Quinn. And Mara Quinn had supposedly been murdered in 1981, 17 years before the fishing boat disappeared. Nobody would explain who Mara Quinn was. Not clearly, not directly, but after days of questioning drunks, dock workers, and retired sailors, Elias pieced together the legend. In the late 1970s, the Pacific Northwest coastline became a smuggling route for a pirate crew known as the Black Tide. They weren't movie pirates with parrots and treasure maps. They trafficked weapons, stolen military cargo, disappearances, bodies. Entire crews vanished after crossing them. The Black Tide operated from hidden coves between Washington and Oregon, attacking isolated ships during storms when radar visibility dropped. And secretly controlling them all was Mara Quinn, former merchant sailor, brilliant strategist, pure psychopath. Rumors claim she executed traitors by chaining them to anchors and dropping them into freezing water while the crew watched. The FBI hunted her for years. Then suddenly, in 1981, reports claimed she had been killed during a violent mutiny aboard an abandoned cargo vessel near Astoria. The Black Tide disappeared after that, or so everyone believed. On Elias's 4th night in Blackwater Cove, somebody slipped a note under his motel door. It contained only one sentence. She lied about dying. Below the message was an address. A cabin deep inside the woods, outside town. Elias drove there the next morning. Inside lived a thin, elderly man named Everett Shaw. The moment Elias mentioned Mara Quinn, the old man nearly broke down, because Everett Shaw had once been part of the Black Tide. He admitted it, trembling. Said he was only 17 when recruited. Said Mara controlled people through fear. According to Everett, the Black Tide didn't disappear after 1981. Mara staged her own death. The FBI informant who planned to expose the crew was murdered instead, then burned beyond recognition to fake Mara's body. Afterward, the pirates moved operations offshore and became even more violent. They stopped caring about money, Everett whispered. It became something else. What do you mean? Elias asked. Everett stared toward the window. Hunting. The old men explained that certain crews were targeted deliberately, not robbed. Erased. Sometimes entire ships vanished without cargo being touched. Mara enjoyed terror more than profit. And then Everett said something worse. The Mercy Bell wasn't random. Elias felt cold immediately. Everett leaned closer. The crew saw something they weren't supposed to see. In 1998, the Mercy Bell accidentally entered restricted waters near Hollow Reef during heavy fog. The fishermen thought they discovered illegal fuel transfers between cargo ships. What they actually witnessed was an execution. The Black Tide had boarded another vessel. According to Everett, Mara personally ordered every crew member murdered, but one fisherman aboard the Mercy Bell secretly recorded part of the attack using a handheld cassette recorder. That was the tape Elias now possessed. They tried running, Everett said, but you can't outrun Black Tide boats in fog. So what happened to the fishermen? Everett's eyes filled with guilt. They surrendered. Elias expected relief. Instead, Everett whispered. Mara promised to spare them if they kept quiet. Silence filled the cabin. Then Everett said the sentence Elias would never forget. She kept half the promise. Before Elias left, Everett handed him an old photograph. 6 men stood beside a black speedboat. One of them was clearly a younger Everett. Another man stood near the back holding a shotgun. But Elias focused on the woman standing near the center. Dark coat, sharp eyes, expressionless face. That's Mara Quinn, Everett whispered. According to Everett, Mara handled everything. Disappearances, fake identities, witness elimination, police bribes. She never raised her voice, never panicked, and unlike what the world believed, she was still alive. Elias suddenly understood why the town remained afraid. The Black Tide never truly ended. It adapted. That night, Elias returned to his motel room and instantly knew somebody had entered. The curtains were open, his suitcase had been moved, and the cassette tape was gone. Heart pounding, Elias searched the room desperately. Then he noticed something taped beneath the television. A photograph. It showed Elias standing outside Everett Shaw's cabin earlier that day. Someone had taken the picture from the trees. Written on the back were 4 words: "Leave Blackwater Cove tonight." Elias barely slept. At 3 a.m., he heard footsteps outside his motel room. Slow, measured. Then came knocking. 3 soft taps. Elias grabbed a lamp as a weapon. The knocking stopped. Minutes passed. Silence. Then a voice from the hallway quietly said, "You should have stayed curious instead of brave." The footsteps disappeared. The next morning, Everett Shaw's cabin burned to the ground. Police called it an electrical accident. Elias knew it was murder. The old man had been silenced. And now Elias was next. Terrified but obsessed, Elias dug deeper into shipping records connected to Hollow Reef. That was when he uncovered something impossible. Recent cargo manifests still used an old Black Tide identification symbol, a black wave painted inside a circle, meaning the organization was active, current, operating through commercial shipping routes. But before Elias could publish anything, his editor called in panic. Someone had broken into the magazine office in Seattle. Computers destroyed, files erased, and one sentence spray painted across the wall. The tide never left. Elias finally realized the horrifying truth. The Black Tide wasn't merely pirates anymore. They had become a criminal network hidden inside shipping companies, port security, and coastal law enforcement. Smuggling, disappearances, human trafficking, weapons, all buried beneath legitimate businesses. And Blackwater Cove protected them because the town depended on their money. That explained the silence, the fear, the missing evidence. Even the sheriff, but Elias still needed proof strong enough to expose them publicly. So he returned to the harbor one last time, at midnight, during heavy fog, exactly where the Mercy Belle had first reappeared. And that was when another boat emerged from the mist. Black hull, no registration numbers, no lights, just drifting silently toward him. Elias heard footsteps aboard the vessel. Then a woman's voice called out calmly, "You've caused enough problems." Mara Quinn stepped into view, older now, but unmistakable. She smiled slightly. "You should have listened to the warning." Mara offered Elias a deal. Leave town, destroy the tape, forget everything. In return, he would live. When Elias refused, Mara laughed softly. "You think exposing us changes anything?" She pointed toward the harbor lights. "Every port hides monsters. We simply learned how to survive longer." Then Elias noticed something behind her. Several men dragging heavy chains across the deck. Anchors. Suddenly, Everett's story about Mara returned to his mind. Mara stepped closer. "The ocean is very good at keeping secrets." But Elias had prepared for this meeting. Earlier that evening, he secretly uploaded the cassette, recording, photographs, and shipping documents to multiple journalists and federal agencies. If he disappeared now, the evidence would spread everywhere. For the first time, Mara's expression changed. Not fear, anger, real anger. "You have no idea what you started," she whispered. Then sirens erupted across the harbor. Multiple Coast Guard boats emerged through the fog. Someone had betrayed the black tide. Gunshots exploded instantly. Chaos consumed the water, and during the confusion, Mara Quinn vanished into the mist. Federal investigations lasted almost 2 years. Several shipping executives were arrested. Corrupt officers disappeared before questioning. Mass graves connected to black tide operations were discovered along remote coastal areas. The story became national news, but one thing never happened. Mara Quinn was never found. Neither was the original black tide money. Some investigators believed Mara escaped overseas. Others believed she had changed identities years earlier and was still hiding somewhere in America. Elias published a best-selling book about the case and became famous overnight. But according to people close to him, he changed afterward. He stopped living near the ocean, stopped answering unknown phone calls, stopped sleeping properly. Because months after the investigation ended, a package arrived at his apartment. No return address. Inside was the stolen cassette tape, and attached to it was a handwritten note. Just one sentence. "The black tide remembers."